What is going on, guys? HappiDaze here. In today's video, we're talking all about bounties. So this was a question that was actually submitted by one of you, thanks to Mr. Anonymous Man, who submitted this question about how you actually raise bounties. So that'd be a good topic to actually dive into. We'll talk about how bounty came to be, how you can get bounty today, what the rewards are, and then just some final thoughts for if you're a new or an old player, how bounty might be helpful to you. Before we actually get into those topics, though, just a quick disclaimer that not to get discouraged, but 95% of the year, bounty will be absolutely useless and meaningless to you. And what that means is that you'll see that number slowly tick up as you do events, but you won't actually get the benefits of that increased bounty until usually once a year. And we'll kind of go into that when we talk about some of the rewards that you can get for getting higher bounties. But just keep in note that most of the year, you're not locked out of content. There's no ranking effect not having a high bounty does for you. But there is one event that Bandai does every year that will be affected by your bounty. So it's just something to keep in mind that we'll talk about a little bit later. But just know that not having a high bounty doesn't restrict you from actually playing any content in One Piece Treasure Cruise. So let's go ahead and dive a little bit into the history of what that bounty looks like. So bounty was originally introduced probably about 7-8 years ago in One Piece Treasure Cruise, and the idea was that you could go into the extra island and they would have these Fortnite islands that were out there. And based on those Fortnite islands, you would challenge them and they would have certain challenges that you could do, and depending on the challenges that you completed, you could get bounty for completing certain challenges. And they might be beat a Fortnite with a certain color team, do a certain amount of damage. So it's very kind of reminiscent of what Grand Voyage actually transformed into, but just kind of the precursor to that. And the original intention from Bandai was to be able to let people go ahead and get bounty, and then there would be rewards in the form of ships and things like that. But unfortunately, that never ended up happening. Bandai never released any ships. People got titles for getting high ranking, but other than that, it was kind of really meaningless. So back in August of 2021, Bandai thought, what can we do to go ahead and kind of increase this bounty system, right? It's such an integral part of One Piece, the anime and manga, that they would want to do it on here too. And their response to that was to basically say, all right, we're going to wipe out everyone's bounty as of version 11 of One Piece Treasure Cruise. Everyone starts at 0, so it's a level playing field, and from there on, you'll be able to collect bounty through monthly events and different special events that were going on. And that's how the new bounty system ended up coming into play. So they said that there would be a lot of gems that you could get, and we'll see when we kind of get into the rewards that there are a good amount of gems you can get for raising that bounty. But outside of that, there's really only a couple other uses that bounty has served in this game, which is good and bad. It's good that you're not locked out of content or it doesn't affect normal gameplay, but it is kind of a bummer that you don't really get too much from there. But we'll talk about those rewards a little bit later. So with that, now we can talk about how the bounty system came to be. Let's actually talk about how you can earn bounty and all these different game modes that allow you to earn the bounty. And there are a lot of game modes that allow you to earn bounty. Some are definitely more fair than others, so it's kind of important to kind of keep track of what each one does, what they provide to you, and then you can kind of see, depending on if you're a newer player, an older player, where that might help or hurt you. So let's go ahead and first dig into Treasure Map, and we'll start talking about that. And as Treasure Map loads, as you can see here, you can get bounty from ranking. Before we get into the rankings, let's quickly talk about what Treasure Map is. So for those of you who are not familiar with Treasure Map is our monthly event that we have where you can take on 4 different mini-bosses, a main boss, and also an optional intrusion boss. And there are 3 different difficulties that you can be in. You can either be in the East Blue League, which is the easiest difficulty, Grand Line, which is the middle, and New World, which is the hardest. And the amount of bounty you can earn in each mode is restricted by the seed that you're in. So if you're in one of the lower seas, you'll get less total bounty. And you earn bounty in Treasure Map by your total point ranking based on the number of points you earn by defeating the mini-bosses, so by defeating the main boss and the intrusion boss with the boosted units. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the bounties for each of the leagues to give you an example of why you might want to choose one league or the other, or why it might be of interest to move up from one league to the other. So we're going to go ahead and click the ranking button here. And we're going to go into the ranking reward. And we're going to the top percent rewards. And we're just going to quickly switch over to the East Blue League. And the important thing to note here is that in East Blue, if you want to get any bounty at all, you have to at least rank in the top 60% of players. And if you don't, then unfortunately you get nothing. You just get some limit break materials here. But once you hit that 60 threshold that's there, in the 40 to 60 range, you can get basically 150,000 bounty that's there. And as you go up higher percentage ranks, you can obviously get more points that's there. So for example, if you're in the top 10%, you can get up to 600,000 bounty, which is obviously significantly more than if you rank in the top 60%. And even if you get to the top 1%, you could earn up to 750k. The top 1% is 750k. So it's very important to just make sure that you rank high, because the higher you rank, the more bounty you're going to go, and it scales pretty quickly once you get up there. So this is one East Blue League, which is the easiest of the seas that are out there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other seas, just take a look of how that changes once you get to Grand Line and to New World. So if I was to take a look at Grand Line, just for playing the event, if you score at all in this Grand Line C, you automatically get 750k for playing, which is automatically more than you get if you ranked number 1 in East Blue, right? So that's why it's so critical that you want to start leveling up the seas that you play in the difficulty, so that way you can keep getting more bounty quicker. And if you're in the top 10%, for example, you can earn up to 2.25 million points, which is kind of nuts. The fact that you can get from one event that comes every month, you can get 2.25 million points. And same thing, if you get top 1%, then you can get a grand total of 3 million bounty, which is pretty crazy. So, like I said, it's obviously much more difficult in Grand Line and New World, but the amount of bounty you can get is just increased so much that you want to make sure that you try to rank up as high as you can so you can get this bounty. Now let's go ahead and take a look at New World, which is the hardest league. So just for playing on New World, you get 1.5 million, which is crazy. It's awesome. So that's why getting to New World is so critical, because even if you get kicked out because you didn't place in the top 90%, you still get 1.5 just for playing in that match. So it's super critical to get into New World if bounty is really important to you. Same thing, if you get into top 10% here, then you can end up getting 4.5 million bounty. 525,000 if you're in the top 10%. And then if you're in the top 1%, you can see you can end up getting 6 million bounty. So just a ton of bounty that you can get. It scales up. So if bounty is important to you, you want to make sure that you want to get in those higher leagues and rank high in those leagues. Now, yes, that often means that you have to do some polling, because if you want to get the most point boosters, to get the highest points, to get better rank, you do have to do that, which is kind of the disadvantage there. But even if you're in New World, as long as you're in that top 90%, you're going to get 1.5, which is just fantastic. So try as hard as you can to get into there, so that way you can stay in New World and reap the most benefits of your buck for a treasure map. So now we went over a treasure map, let's go ahead and talk about Pirate Rumble, because that will be the next area where you're able to gain bounty on a monthly basis as well. And we'll just go and do some successful defenses, which is great. And let's go ahead and talk about Pirate Rumble and what we can do here. Before we get into the actual rewards for Pirate Rumble, though, let's just quickly talk about what this mode is. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Pirate Rumble is one of the 2 PvP modes that we have in the game, where you basically have 3 preliminary round fights, block A, B, C, and then you either have a championship or an exhibition based on how you rank. So if you get top 5k in either A, B, or C, then you get to the championship round, and if you do not get that, then you get put in the exhibition round at the end. And similar to Treasure Map, the amount of bounty you get is directly tied to your performance rank. You can't earn an actual bounty in blocks A, B, or C, so you don't have to worry too much about ranking high. You just make sure you hit that 5k so that you can be able to get into either the championship or the exhibition. Just one thing to note, that for exhibition, if you do want to end up getting some bounty there, let's just hop over to the ranking reward so we can see. You can see an exhibition, in order to actually get any bounty, you basically have to rank in the top 3,000. If you don't rank in the top 3,000, unfortunately, you do not get any bounty. It is kind of a shame, but top 3k isn't really that hard. And for most people, you probably won't even really have to gem if you want to stay in that top 3k, at least not on the exhibition. Championship is much more fierce. There's a lot more competition. So if you want to stay in top 3k in the championship, you probably would have to spend a couple of gems there. But at least for exhibition, if you go in the top 3K, you'll basically get that 100K bounty, and then it goes all the way up to 500K if you're in the top 10. Like I said, most people will probably rank somewhere in the 1,000 to 3,000 range, just based on what people do, and that nets you basically a 100K if you're in the exhibition mode. Similarly, if you go to the championship mode, which is the more advanced version, basically if your bounty here starts if you're in the top 15,000, and it starts at 600K, which is 6 times the top 3K rank from the exhibition, which is why getting into championship is so critical, because you'll be able to get so much more bounty for so much little work. Just the fact that you can rank top 15K and get 600,000 bounty is absolutely nuts, which is why you just want to make sure that if you can, you get that 5K in either block A, B, or C, so you can make sure you qualify for the championship, and then you have at a minimum that 600K if you can get top 15,000. And obviously it goes up from there, so if you rank back to the 1,000 to 2,000 rank, which is where a lot of people will probably end up falling, or even the 2 to 3, it's about 1.25 million, which is still fantastic. It's a great amount that's there. And then as you scroll up, you start getting more. If you're in the top 1,000, you get 1.5. And then if you go all the way and get to rank 1, you get 2.5 million. But like I said, most people will probably end up somewhere in that 1.25 million range, assuming that you don't spend too many gems on championship match. So it's a quick way to be able to get bounty. It comes back every month, just like TM. And the advantage of the Pirate Rumble versus some of the other modes is that you can keep refreshing the teams that you're facing until you find a team that you know you can beat. So it's much easier to be able to actually go in and find a team that you know you'll win them against, and that will lead to more points, which leads to higher rank. So it's probably, for newer players, one of the more fair modes for how you're able to get in and the championship, and then also rank in that top 1 to 3K, so you can get 1.25 million bounty every month that's there. So that's the first of the PvP modes. So let's go ahead and talk about the second, which is really Grand Party. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Grand Party and all the fun that it is, and it's everyone's favorite game mode, and total sarcasm in case you didn't get it, so Grand Party is basically the PvP mode where you have limited retries and hidden teams once you start getting above 12, 13 wins. And you basically try to get 15 wins on the seasons. Now, unfortunately, because it's not currently going on, I can't click on the rewards button here to actually show you what you can get. But just to give you an example of what you might be able to get bounty-wise, if you get a single win, you basically get 10K bounty, which isn't a lot, obviously. But if you go all the way up to 9 wins, you get 100K bounty. And then if you're able to go all the way up to 15 and get 15 out of 15, you can get basically a 1 million bounty. So it's not the best mode for raising your bounty, especially because you have to get 15 out of 15 to get the 1 million, which is super hard, especially if you're a new player. So if you're new, I wouldn't focus on Pirate Rumble Grand Party as the way to quickly level up your bounty, because you really need a stacked box. You need a full team that has max cotton candies, limit breaks, and those kind of things if you want to be able to get 15 out of 15 wins. Or you just get lucky and have someone who uses the friend captain strategy. But either way, it's not a very friendly mode for new players to try to get bounty quick here. So avoid that if you're a new player. So let's go ahead and dive into Kizuna as the next mode that we'll talk about, where you're able to actually go ahead and increase your bounty. So before we hop into the actual rewards for Kizuna, just a quick reminder. So Kizuna is an event where you basically face 3 bosses, and you get tickets which you can use to get chests. And those chests have things like skulls, gems, potential ability posters, Kizuna tokens, and then you can use those tokens to get units and skulls. There are 2 different Kizuna modes. So there is a mode where the normal monthly Kizuna, where there are no super bosses, it's just these 3 bosses, but you also have a second version where you basically have a Pirate Alliance Kizuna, where not only do you have the 3 bosses you face here, but you also face super bosses as well. And that gives you an opportunity to get more ranking and things like that. So what's important to note here is that there's really 2 different levels of bounty here as opposed to some of the other modes that we've seen before. And that is really your personal ranking and your alliance ranking. So just to give you an example, for your personal ranking, you can get anywhere from about 100,000 to about 2.5 million, just depending on your ranking. But most people will probably rank somewhere in the top 3K range, and that will net you about 1 million bounty, which isn't bad at all. For your alliance ranking portion, you need to be able to get top 5k in your alliance rank in order to get basically about 500k bounty. So it's not nearly as much as you get for the personal ranking, but if you go all the way up to rank number 10, if your alliance is ranked number 10 in total points, then you can get somewhere close to 2 million roughly. So obviously personal is the much more area to focus on. That's the easier way. You'll get much more bounty that way. Alliance is good because it kind of is a nice supplement to what you get there. And you can also get additional bounty based on your alliance grade. So how basically it works is that your alliance, based on your total points, how you rank against other alliances, will have you get a grade. And the highest grade is S, and then it goes down to A, and then it goes down to B. So as long as your alliance gets a B rank or higher, then you can pick up roughly another 900k bounty per monthly Kizuna event as well. So it's just something that's just very important to know, to remember, and it will just kind of help you remember that Kizuna will, based on your personal ranking, your alliance ranking, will get you some more bounty there. So next we're going to go ahead and talk about special events. So a good example of that is the Blitz battle that just happened. So again, these are a combination of both your personal and your alliance rankings, and the rewards vary based on the importance of the events. Some events have more bounty than others, depending on what they are. And basically, they have the 4 levels of bounty rewards that you can personally get. So how this is a little bit different is that there are kind of 2 different versions of the game, right? So there's the version that you currently play in, which could be the English version or the Japanese version, and then there's a worldwide ranking, which has both versions combined. So you can actually get bounty for each of those. So there is a personal ranking for your app, there's an alliance ranking for within your app or within the current game that you play, and then there's also a worldwide ranking, which takes both the players from English and Japanese, combines them, and then you all compete together instead of separately. So it's important to just know that in those different modes, if we take a look at, for example, the last Blitz that just came by, you know, the alliance rankings get anywhere from about 250k for top 20,000 all the way up to, you know, 1.25 million for number 1 worldwide. And then for in-app, for your version that you play, whether it's in the English version or the Japanese version, the same kind of rewards apply, except you have to be in a much lower ranking. So in order to get the rewards on the in-app version, you have to be top 10k, as opposed to the top 20k if you are doing worldwide ranking. So in-app, you have to have you have to score better because there's less people, is how it kind of comes down to. It's important to know that your worldwide personal ranking can also net you anywhere from about 100k if you get top 15,000 all the way up to 2.5 million for number 1. Now, these events are a little bit harder to be able to actually get you know, the bounty you're looking for, just because they don't happen often, right? You might have 3 or 4 of these events a year. So while it might be a nice quick boost to get, you know, somewhere in like the 2 to 4 million range, just depending how you do and how hard you go at the Blitz and how you do ranking, it's not something like TM, which is here every month, where you can get, you know, double or triple those points in that same time. So it's important to rank up and play these events just so you can get the bounty, and they're all focused on your rewards, right? They want you to play the game, and the more points you get, the higher you rank, the more bounty you're going to get. So that is how you can do special events. So let's go ahead and move on to Pirate King Adventure, which is kind of the last big game mode they introduced, and let's go ahead and talk about that real quick. And we'll go ahead and talk about what PKA actually is first. So PKA is the monthly game mode where you can basically get a nice free-to-play legend as long as you kind of go through the different levels to level up your total level up to a grand total 150. And then by going to 150, you not only get bounty, but you can also collect a bunch of different materials and things like that, legend tickets and all that good stuff. So let's just talk about what you have to actually do in this mode that gives you a new free-to-play character in order to get your bounty. So the first thing that's important to know is that you will not get any bounty in PKA until you get at least above level 70. And once you pass the level 70 threshold, you can basically earn up to 600,000 by going from, you know, 70 to level 100. Now, for a lot of players, this is, especially newer players, going past level 100 is really hard, just because once you start getting past level 100, you either need the new batch, you need a bunch of older, fully limited break units, so it's super hard to really go past 100 if you're a newer player. But the advantage to that is that, yeah, going from 70 to 100, you only get 600k, but if you go to 100 to 150, you get roughly an additional 2.5 million bounty. And that's just crazy, right? If it's almost 4 times the amount of bounty you get by going 50 levels as opposed to 30 you had to go before. So that's why if you're an older player or a veteran player, this is a really good place where you can get bounty really quick. You can use Nakama Network, Stomp, Toadski, all those guys, Chaozu. They all post videos on kind of how to help clear from 100 to 150. So I would definitely look into some of these videos, and even some, I posted some for the last PKA versus Whitebeard that we did as well. But it's super critical that if you want to get a lot of bounty, that each month you're doing all these different events, right? You're doing Treasure Map, you're doing Kizuna, you're doing Pirate Rumble, you're doing PKA. And, you know, each of these events, you can get at least a couple million each event, right? Which might mean in a month you might be able to get somewhere between 8 to 10 million bounty, right? Which is fantastic. So that means that, you know, roughly by the end of the year, you know, you might be able to get 100k bounty, for example, which is a pretty good clip or a pretty good threshold there. So if you're going to play this mode, I highly recommend that you go up past 100 and try to get to that 150, because like I said, once you get towards the end, especially from 130 on, the jump between the levels is just so much high in the amount of bounty that you can get that it's completely and totally worth it. So that is PKA, and then we'll go ahead and talk about the last mode of the day, which is really made for players who are been in the game for a while, who are veteran players, and that is really everyone's fun game mode, the Grand Voyage. So let's go ahead and just give a quick summary for those of you who don't know. Grand Voyage really tasks you with being able to take on all these different stages, and the idea is that each of these stages has different clear conditions that you have to do in order to get these little sundials that you have here. So if you take a look here, if you went to the mission select, you could see, for example, there's 5 different levels. Each one gives some of these anchored or ship wheel tokens, sorry. And based on the number of ship wheel tokens, that determines how much total bounty you can get. So this is certainly the fastest mode to get bounty. So if you look, even if you start out at the bottom, once you get 5 of these ship wheel token things, basically you can get 5 million every time, every 5 levels, right? So you get 5 million at 5, at 10 you get another 5 million, and then 15, same thing, all the way to when you go up to level 65. So this is certainly the quickest way. If you're trying to quickly level up your bounty and you're an older player, this is the way to do it. Now the downside to this mode is that in order to really play this mode, you have to have an endgame box, right? The whole purpose of this mode is that they want endgame players to have reason to level limit break their characters level 5, max their cotton candy, have the most optimal teams to beat these, because these are super hard, challenging content. If you just started the game, there's no way you're going to be able to really get to that 65 threshold right away. Not saying you might not be able to, do the first or second level on each of these different stages that's out here, and maybe you get up to 5 or 10 or maybe even 15 if you're a new player, and that will still give you 15 million bounty, which is fantastic. That could be up to a month and a half or almost 2 months worth of bounty through the other modes. So it's definitely worth it if you can to at least do the lower difficulty bounties, so that way you can try to start collecting the 5, 10, 15 rewards. And that will just make your life so much easier, just because it's 5 million at one shot. So with that wrapping up, those are the 7 different modes that Bandai gives us in order to get bounty. Now, this mode, for example, they only come out with a new island every couple months, so it's kind of tough. This isn't a reoccurring event like Kizuna or TM or Grand Party, where you're able to, on a monthly basis, kind of recurring earn bounty, right? So this is a little bit tougher, and that's why they kind of give you a little bit more per stage that you're able to do there to kind of make up for that. So that is those 7 game modes. So let's go ahead and talk about the rewards real quick, and then we'll wrap up this video. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, the rewards for getting bounty aren't really that great. 95% of the time it is useless, but there is 5% of the time where it actually is very helpful. And that is the once a year event that Bandai does, where basically they reward you for the amount of bounty you have. So to give you an example, what just happened last year is that if you had over 300 million bounty, Bandai would end up giving you somewhere on the order of about 20 legends with a mix of older and newer, but many players who've been playing the game for a while end up getting, 20 plus legend tickets for free, which is just insane, right? And it's great level limit break material, and it's super helpful. The previous year before that, I believe that threshold was somewhere around the 200 million range. So it seems like they've kind of maybe stabilized around saying, hey, people should be getting, roughly about 100 million bounty a year. And that will allow you to make sure that you can kind of maximize your rewards. So if you're starting to plan for the next year, I would say a good goal to have would be to see if you can get somewhere up to around the 400 million range by the time that event comes around. Now, like I said, I know for a lot of people it's hard. You do have to play all the events. You do have to rank high. So if you're a newer player, obviously you don't have to worry about that. You still will get something. Similar to what happened in the previous year, even though if you didn't have the 300 million bounty, you just got a little bit less legends. So maybe instead of getting 20 plus, maybe you got 15 plus or 10 plus. But they still made sure that people were able to benefit from that. So definitely worth it, and that's kind of the main reason you want to raise your bounty. The second reason you might want to raise your bounty is that because as you look at the rankings that you see here, as you start ranking higher, you end up getting more gems and things like that, right? So if you want to earn bounty, and sorry, it's actually in the Chopper Man missions, but as you start earning more bounty, you obviously get more and more gems that are there. So just make sure that you're continually raising your bounty, and that means you'll always get a steady supply of gems as well, which always helps for things like pulls, or just if you're looking to use it for content or whatever it might be. It's just a good source to get some free-to-play gems that's there. And the last reason that basically bounty is so important, and the reason that it's critical to get, is if you want to join an alliance, what the bounty system actually kind of does is it basically allows you as a player to kind of show your investment in the game, right? If you are looking to join an alliance, most of the times they have some kind of threshold to make sure that people who are joining are familiar with the game, they play the events, because as you play the events and you grind and you get higher rankings, you obviously get more bounty. So if someone goes to join a new alliance, for example, and they have a member who's trying to join who has a 300 million bounty versus someone who has 150 million bounty, they're most likely going to choose that 300 million bounty because they'll help level up quicker. So it just helps kind of sell yourself to prospective alliances if you're looking to join an alliance, and it shows that you're kind of devoted to the game and that you're serious about investing time in OPTC. So those are just some of the rewards that can happen and why you want to go ahead and get the bounty. So with that, we are going to go wrap up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. As I mentioned, this came from one of you guys. So similar to what I've said in the video that I introduced this Q&A series, go ahead and shoot an email to happidazeoptc@gmail.com. I'll throw it in the description with your questions, and I will turn that into a video similar to this one that can hopefully help the wider community. So thank you for watching, and until next time, be kind to each other. Thanks, guys.